Do we have anyone who has signed up to say something? There not being anyone, we will go ahead and get started. And I will just say for the record, anybody who is watching this film, that if you come and you sign up and you want to speak, you come and just sign up this day and come. And then we have a limitation on the amount of time. And the idea is that it be something that's on our agenda. So you have seen the published agenda, which is published a week ahead of time as to the topics. So, first of all, I think everyone has received the minutes. Do we have any corrections other than there are a couple of little typos on at least the copy I have, but if with your permission, those will they're not substantive, so they will be cleaned up. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. I want to start with a couple of things. One is to welcome a non-voting member of our commission. As I think everyone knows, we have, when we have a full complement, we have 12 members of our commission, and we have 5 non-voting who are representatives of their particular department. So, Donald, I appreciate that. And Cindy may say a little more about you and how much intersection we've had with you before this.
Yeah, so please welcome Donald Anthony from our Metro Planning Department. Donald has worked with us a lot on the reviews that we do on development plans, particularly SP plans that come through, and trying to accommodate Greenways on those plans. And we're just happy to have him here. We'll give him a minute to talk at towards the end of the agenda where we have department reports. But welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. And I'd also like to introduce Louise Bryan, who's come to be a visitor, and she is the president of the Nashville Parks Foundation and one of our partners in the world. So thanks for coming. And we have, of course, great members of the Greenways staff and Greenways for Nashville Head, and we will you'll be hearing from Amy Crownover later. I wanted to start us out just with a couple of things. One is just to remind ourselves that after our orientation, we talked a lot about, and then we affirmed at our meetings after that we would have, whenever possible, a deep dive into some aspect of the work of this commission and the department and our responsibilities that are in the ordinance. And so last month we concentrated on the process itself for design and construction of greenways, plus a focus on how we work with private developers who are exceptional participants on a voluntary basis with our work. And so this particular meeting, we're going to focus on the open space part of our title, which is Greenways and Open Space Commission, and the processes and sources and examples of open space. So, and then obviously keeping in mind the ways that members of this commission or other people can help with this this part of our mission. Two other things that I wanted to add that will be regular in our commission meetings. One is in addition to the deep dive topic that we take up, there'll be a regular report for your questions and information purposes, usually on about 4 or maybe 5 of the most prominent active projects, and get updates from Cindy on that. And then, of course, as you know, we have dozens of other projects and pieces of projects in the works. But rather than going through each one of those, each meeting, sometimes there'll be written listings, so you have a sense of what stage those are at. Obviously, in December, where there's a complete review of what's happened during this year, you will see those. But no, at any point, you can ask about any of these projects that come to your attention. So, but just wanted to let you know, we'd be looking at, 4 or 5 as a real update. And then the second thing that will be a regular part of our commission meeting is I'm going to ask I'm going to ask this question at the end of each commission meeting, and that is there something that you want to be sure is on our agenda at some point in the future? If you want it to absolutely come up at the next one, you can say that, or you can leave us discretion on the time of things that are going on. But I also invite you on that subject to think as actively as you can during these presentations. What are things that you want to know about, or you want fleshed out for the whole commission, so that we can make decisions on some of those sometimes, but just be thinking about that. So right now I'm going to turn this over to Cindy to talk with us about the open space part of our mission, about the process, some examples of how we get land for these greenways and for other aspects of open space. But be thinking about, as you hear this, ways that we can help and ideas about these things. So, Cindy?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for being here. This is a topic that I really like to talk about, so bear with me if I've got a lot I want to say, and I don't want to go on for too long, so if you can bear with me and hold questions maybe to the end. If you want to jot those down or whatever, I'll be certain to get back to those. But, open space, right? Half of our commission, greenways and open space. We talk about greenways a lot, but the greenways couldn't happen without the open space. Our park system couldn't happen without our public open space. So we're charged with that. We're charged with finding those spaces, conserving those spaces for all of our facilities, not just greenways, but of course, we're super fond of greenways. So why open space, right? Why does the city need open space? Why do we need to invest in it? And, the natural world is a critical part of our urban fabric. And as development happens, the opportunities to conserve open space or go away, or they're challenged, or we're into competition with development sometimes. We know that a good system of open spaces, greenways, parks is critical for mental health, social well-being, all the things you see in our little graphic here: recreation, connecting neighborhoods, connecting people to just social connections. During COVID, we especially realized the mental well-being and physical benefits of greenways and open spaces. Conserving habitat, we don't always think about that, especially in a very urban setting, but it's just as important, if not more, in the urban setting to conserve those spaces and to create new spaces and to integrate those into the development that's happening around us, and how to best do that so that it's a positive for everyone. So I want to get into a little bit about how we acquire open space. I get a lot of questions. How do you prioritize? How do you purchase that, or how do you pay for it? Where can you put a greenway? There's some misconceptions. Floodways are not automatically a place that we can put a greenway. We can't just lay down a trail if we don't have the right-of-way for the trail. And I hear that a lot. I think there is that idea that why don't, you know where you want to put it, why don't you just go build it? I wish, but that's not the case. So we have a framework that we have to work within. And so there's the need. We need to identify, where these spaces need to be, where greenways need to be built. We have to have the right of access. We have to have the right to be there. We either need to own it or have a license for it. We'll get into that in a moment. We have to be able to fund it. There are multiple ways of funding. Sometimes that's a donation and no funding's involved. And then the opportunities for these spaces. Where can they go? What's available? If it's not for sale, but we know we want a greenway in a certain area, how do we make that happen? How do we make a park happen in an area where we may not have the opportunity? So I'll start with identify the need. Of course, planning is critical. We need to know where we're headed. Where do we want parks? Where do we want greenways? Where are the connections that need to be made? What are the underserved neighborhoods and communities? And we have those, of course, all over the county. Where are the areas that are developing rapidly right now? And what do we think are the trends for the future? Where are the natural resources and the cultural resources as well that need to be conserved? Where are the connections, both getting people to other parks, getting people from neighborhoods to, business centers, schools, transportation, alternative transportation methods. How do we make those connections happen? How do we get the public then access to these spaces? So we create a park. How do we get people there? Do they always have to hop in their car? Can we be close enough that they can walk? Are there trails to get them there? Are there sidewalks and bike lanes to connect to the greenways? And then levels of service, again, tying into underserved neighborhoods and communities, but also what are the different types of facilities that are needed and what kind of land is needed for that? A lot of that, most of that, is in Plan to Play, and we're updating the Plan to Play is the Parks and Greenways Master Plan that we're updating right now. So we'll spend the better part of the next 9 to 12 months updating that. You all will be part of that process as stakeholders and giving input. But those are the things, what is the need? Where do we need to spend our funds? What are the opportunities? So again, just because we want to build something doesn't mean that we have the place to do it. And sometimes that's a cold call. A couple years ago, we were looking for parkland in what was at the time Councilmember Sepulveda's district that had no parks in it. There was some bordering it directly, very close, but no parks there. So, we looked at parcels that were large enough to facilitate a park, vacant land that might be for sale, land that might be developed. Maybe there was space there. We spent some time just out in the community, and we got lucky on that one and came across 3 parcels that were about 10 acres total that were for sale. And we had the capital funding to purchase those parcels. Beautiful piece of land. I'll show you the plan for that in a few minutes, but we talked with the owner. Of course, we always, are you willing to donate? That's the first question. And per his right, he wanted to sell the land. It was land that had been in the family for years. It was farmland. There were also very beautiful mature canopy trees. It had 3 connections into the surrounding neighborhood. Streets directly adjacent or dead ending into this park. So already some built-in connectivity. And today that is has been entitled Mariposa Park, and the first phase of that, the master plan is being finalized. So that happened pretty quickly. Like I said, we got lucky. Sometimes we'll see land and we'll just call the owners. Are you interested in selling? It's in an area that we see a need, and you've got this large tract, or maybe it's a small tract. And oftentimes they're not, they're not ready. Come back and talk to me in a few years. And we do, and those conversations can go on for years and years. And then a decision's made. They decide, yep, I'm ready now to sell my land or to donate my land. I'll show you pictures of these in a minute too, but Ravenwood Regional Park, Lytle Bend, an entire bend on the Stones River. That was a relationship that we built with that property owner, talking over the years. Finally, he was ready. And through the efforts of Greenways for Nashville, members of this commission, capital spending funding, we were able to purchase that property. There were legacy gifts given, to the, dollar amount donations that there were legacy gifts. And today, that bend is part of Ravenwood Regional Park, and specifically named Lytle Bend Park. It will have trails on it. It will have animal habitat, plant habitat enhanced out there. And it's just gorgeous. So one way of acquiring property. Again, there's a bend on the Harpeth River that you all know about. The Ariza Bellevue project is on half of that bend. The other half is property that was owned by the Dorothy Kate and Thomas Frist Foundation. And again, conversations with them over the years. And one day I just got a call. We would like to donate this property. Awesome. I was the beneficiary of a lot of work from those that went ahead of me on that. And that's about 53 acres that we will build out. We'll build a greenway, and there's specific requirements with that donation of conserving tree canopy and giving access to the water. So those happen. We are very opportunistic. If something, we know where the need is, we continue to evaluate that need, and sometimes things just fall into our lap, and or we pursue them over those long time periods until they come to fruition. Flood buyout properties, our partners at Metro Water Services and some other organizations have funded the volunteer purchase of properties that are in the floodway. And we've been able to build parks and greenways in those. And just, again, I'll show you some of these in a minute, but just come to mind quickly our Mill Creek Greenway at Whitsett Park, and Richland Creek Greenway at England Park, Browns Creek Greenway at Browns Creek Park, all of those, and currently the Whites Creek Greenway at Hartman to Buena Vista that we're designing. All of those give us the opportunity to build parks and greenways without having to purchase the land. And just keep in mind too, we don't use eminent domain. There are laws against that for recreational purposes. It's contentious. It's just not something we've ever done or the city's ever really supported for recreation. So, we have to get in and find, obtain our access and our right-of-way for that. So, right of access, we either have to purchase the land, we may purchase or receive donated easements. Sometimes we acquire right-of-way through license agreements. 440 Greenway is an example of that, where we have the Greenway in TDOT's excess land through a license agreement with them. Leases, we have leases with the state of Tennessee for parks, the HYSA, I think it's Tennessee football now, Out on the Harpeth River, that's an example of leased land. Donations, again, the Harpeth River, that particular donation, there have been others. Policy, I talked to you a lot about, and we've talked last time about the ordinances that we have currently, which are not particularly robust, but they are very helpful, that allow us to, when a project is subdivided and developed, if it's adjacent to a floodway and the buffers, that space can be acquired as greenway easements. And we utilize that quite often. Also, working with developers who are pursuing an SP zoning. There's an opportunity there to work with them where we have a planned greenway and they can make space for us. Oftentimes it turns into more than just space. It's design and construction of a greenway. Agency partnerships, I mentioned Metro Water Services as one of those where land can come to us without Metro capital dollars happening. And then public-private partnerships as well. So I'll pause for a second and see if there's any questions.
So when someone donates 50 acres or something, are there I know that there are some financial benefits to them in terms of tax, but are there incentives or benefits that we grant on our part to them?
We don't have that ability, other than possibly naming a park or some of those kind of benefits, not financial benefits. It's definitely a legacy for someone to donate land for parks,
But naming is a possibility.
Naming is a possibility. Of course, naming a park, that can be stipulated in a donation. If we're just purchasing a park, it goes through a naming committee, and any kind of stipulation in a deed and a donation still comes to the park board for approval.
I got you.
So,
All right, thank you.
yeah. And just to, yes. Sure.
Do we have any instances of landowners who have a conservation easement they've put in place but want to allow for a partnership where just a strip of that is allowed for Greenway? Or
Well, we, I think along those same lines, we are dedicated greenway easements from private property owners. Sometimes it's just totally voluntary. Other times it comes about through development happening. And that's not on a floodway. We would work together to identify what does that space need to look like. Sometimes it's pretty large. Mill Creek Park and Greenway has some pretty large parcels that include the Greenway itself, but we also have an easement over a much larger portion of that. So that does happen.
You mentioned the easements that we can have for Greenway. Are we, do we have all that? Do we have all the easements that we need to do the full 440 Greenway in place?
Not in place. We have license agreements with the state of Tennessee for their excess land over the portions that we've either built or that we're designing to build right now. So to get those license agreements, there is a process. And the first part of that process is their willingness, which they've already indicated. The second is coming to them with construction documents to show what we're going to build. So we have to have funding to do those construction documents. So right now we've got the Sevier Park to Browns Creek Park in design and expect to go to construction later this year or first of next year. There's space in between that's planned for that greenway, the entire 7 miles. And as we do those designs, we'll go to TDOT and ask for those license agreements. Know too that any easement, land acquisition, license agreements that we go into, anything that's not department to department still must go to both the park board and our council to accept. So that's just standard procedure there. All right, any more questions before I roll on through?
You know, I think, I just want to make a comment. Having in a prior part of my life been a part of land conservation and conservation easements, et cetera, there are so many sentences that Cindy is saying that have so many complexities to it. And I don't want that to be lost. I know our Ed and Donald have a sense from the Planning Commission of that, and many of you all do, but I personally go back to your Ravenwood and Lytle Bend example. I mean, those two, that golf course, that Lytle's Bend, goes back 20, 25 years. I mean, Bredesen and other mayors doing everything but being on their knees begging. I mean, I don't know that I should be on saying that on, but it takes an unbelievable village to pull off these big things. And I also want to emphasize the creativity that goes into it. I mean, when that golf course was, converted or has now become a park, I mean, you had to find ways for members to be able to continue to play out their memberships. And, it just takes sometimes a long time and an investment by multiple administrations. And so.
Yep, agreed. And I'll run through in a few minutes some of those projects parks and greenways that we've developed over the years through all these various means. Funding, all right, top of the list. I guess I should have led with that, but capital funding, we typically, they're separated. Typically, we'll get open space funding and then greenway funding. Sometimes it's combined. It really depends. There's no guarantee of capital funds each year, as you all know. We do know that to be opportunistic when land becomes available that we know we should purchase, if we don't have the money, then we don't make the purchase, right? We can do a sale agreement and try to give some time to get into a funding stream. But with, the way that land is quickly being bought and sold and prices continuing to go up, we need funding available. And traditionally, it's been anywhere $2 to $5 million for open space acquisitions. That used to be a good amount of money. Now it doesn't stretch quite as far as it used to, and it depends on where we are. So we can't rely totally on capital funding, but you all can certainly advocate for that. We, again, don't just randomly decide to buy a piece of property just because it's on sale. We don't randomly go to someone to ask if they're interested in selling unless we have it in the plan that we know it's strategically located. So it's great when we can be opportunistic and jump on those opportunities that come to us. Donations, absolutely. Now, again, we won't take just any piece of property, right? It needs to be something that we can use, something that we can maintain, something that makes sense. For a park, we don't need random small pieces of property that can't be developed as a park, or even large pieces that may have topography that we can't do anything with. That's probably more suited for just conservation and other groups. Not only do we want to acquire the property, we want to get people to it. That's kind of the whole point, whether it's park, a greenway, or both. And many of the acquisitions that we make are part of the Greenways master plan, but then open up space for a park to be associated with that, or vice versa. Shelby Bottom's perfect example. All the conservation of that bottom land and the ability to let us build that greenway there perfect example. Grants, we have pursued grants for open space. We have one application that has been submitted. It's for property directly adjacent on the Fort Negley campus. And it's got some historical significance as well as just needed to build out that master plan. So we have a grant application in for that. Nonprofit support, we've certainly had donations through gifts to nonprofits who then, Greenways for Nashville is a good example of that. Donations that have come for Lytle Bend, the perfect example. Partnerships, of course. We have projects that, Frankie Pierce Park is a good example. We'll look at that in a moment. Where land was transferred to Metro Parks, it was privately owned, transferred to us for us to build park, to build Greenway, and then agreements there, even beyond that, for partnering on maintenance and the design and the construction of those facilities. And then other sources, I always put that there. I don't know what those are. I'm looking to you all to help identify those other sources. There are different, tax incentives and those kind of programs that we see both in our city and other cities for different types of development. That's the mystery other source that we all need to be looking into and searching for.
Hi.
Hi.
So you had mentioned the property adjacent to Fort Negley. And so that got me thinking about other properties where we have
And
either.
which one is that, by the way?
Oh, good question.
We lovingly call it the green property, not because it's green, but that's the owner.
But it will be.
But it will be. So it's between the historic cemetery and the railroad that runs through there.
So it has the big building on it right now.
It does have a large building
Okay,
on
that's
it.
cool.
So my question was, for that type of property or a property where there's maybe more ancient historical significance with Native American tribes, what have you, what does that partnership look like with like the Historical Commission, or are there other groups we bring in to make sure that we handle the historic component properly as we go forward?
We do. And the development of the master plan for Fort Negley utilized those consultants and those professionals to look at the geography, to look at the history, to understand what might be under the ground and that needs to be conserved. And again, cultural resources, cultural conservation, the history. Certainly Fort Negley is such a great example of that. So we do all that due diligence, just wanted to make sure we understand what we can do with the property before we try to purchase it. And with the green property, there are Metro dollars involved in that as well to match with the grant. And the Historical Society has partnered with us on that. They've, I wasn't involved in the Fort Negley master plan per se, but there was quite a bit of that due diligence history, the telling of the history, the interpretation, the design of the site to be respectful to that. All of those things are part of the planning process. Yeah.
But we do have Ed Henley here, and he was part of that Fort Negley plan, correct?
Yeah, if I leave anything out, Ed.
No, to say, and just so folks are aware, the efforts, I think what you mentioned, kind of past efforts from the consultant team, there's actually current efforts that are still actively happening near what is the historic Bass Street community, more from an African-American lineage, kind of throughout the years following the Civil War. And that's being undertaken with Middle Tennessee State University. They have a very active student program led by staff and faculty that are there doing these types of efforts really across the state of Tennessee. So excited that they're involved now as well.
And universities are an amazing source of resources. When we purchased land for Mill Ridge Park in southeast Davidson County, there's students, some of the students there did a project interpreting the farm and the cultural history there on that property. Not nearly as robust as Fort Negley. But yeah, so partners, and that's kind of a good segue. We can't do any of this without partners. I know I don't have everyone on here, but it gives you an idea of all the people. And I think you may have seen this slide before, but these are all the, not all, many of the different groups and agencies that we work with. We cannot operate in a vacuum. Everyone is important to making projects happen. And some of our biggest partners are Planning Commission, and we've got Donald and Ed here is active with the Planning Commission, and it just couldn't happen without those kind of partnerships. Other agencies, some that you may or may not know, MDHA, we'll talk about some projects we've worked on with them. Nonprofits, everything from just getting the word out and advocating for open space. I mean, that's in-kind work that has to happen to get those dollars that everyone's competing for. So just kind of keep those in
Can I
mind.
ask one more question?
Sure.
You've got, you mentioned Sevier Park to Browns Creek Park as being quite active, and it sounded like you might be able to get shovel-ready by the end of the year, next year. Do you have the funding for
We'll
that?
have design finished at the end of this year, and we'll have an updated budget estimate with that completed design. So we do have some funds encumbered for what we're calling 440 Phase 2, which is both that project and the section of 440 in front of this building that connects down to Centennial Park. And so we'll have to see if there's enough funding there or if we need to come back and ask council for some additional funding. I suspect that we will, but I think we have the bulk of the money. So
that's funding that was allocated for a particular project, but it can move around and be used for anything in the city central Greenway?
So if funding is granted by the council for a very specific project, that money should be spent for that project. Sometimes, often, we receive capital funding that is for Greenway development or for open space acquisition. Particularly open space, we don't always know what's going to become available, right? So it's not encumbered to a certain project, but the funds come to us in different ways. So we have to honor that.
Cindy, can you give us a little perspective on recent history of particularly what you said, however you phrased it, a cluster of funds for open space and a cluster of fund for Greenways property acquisition or in the capital budget. When was the last time we got let's just say a fungible or could be used on what came up at the relatively
For open
quick?
space, it's
Yeah.
been a couple of capital budget cycles that we've not received open space funding. And I say that with a little bit of a caveat that we have received funding for Charlotte Corridor Railway Trail, a pretty good significant portion. That money can be used for open space acquisition as we need it there. Because
But
that's
related
part of
to
that
that,
project. But
yeah.
just very specific, just open space money. I think it's been 2 cycles since we have had those funds available. We've had funds that have been at the ready, and we've utilized Mariposa Park. We utilized those funds for the purchase of that land. So we will need additional funding as we go forward to continue to expand both the Greenway system and the park system. All right, let's talk fun stuff. Laughlin Springs Park. Clay, I think this is your district? So Laughlin Springs Park, it was existing, and through a neighborhood, really, advocacy, it's a little bit off the page, but there was another 4 acres that the neighborhood and the city wanted to see added to Laughlin Springs. Potential homeowner purchased a large tract of land there and subdivided that and made 4 acres of the land that they purchased available for purchase from Metro. And we worked with Trust for Public Land, 10 Green, the community did fundraising, and then Metro put capital dollars into the project, and we purchased that. It's been a little over a year ago. There won't be a lot of development on that. It's not suited for, active recreation. It's suited for trails and conservation, and continuing to build out our tree canopy. But a great project that was, I think, driven by the community and very successful. Mill Creek Greenway, you know what? David, would you turn off the lights? Thank you. It's a little bit light. I want y'all to, some of this are so beautiful that I don't want you to miss it. There we go. Mill Creek Greenway at Orchard Bend Park. These are not in any kind of order. I tried to pull in older projects and mix them in with the new to kind of give you a project update as we go along here as well. Mill Creek Greenway at Orchard Bend Park exists. It is land that our division worked with property owners to acquire. It's land that we knew would help us build out Mill Creek Greenway, and it's Orchard Bend Park is an anchor park. At the other end, 4 miles away via Greenway, is Mill Creek Park. All that is tied together by Mill Creek Greenway. There's a connection to an elementary and middle school. There are multiple neighborhood connections. The land is certainly conserves habitat. So over the left, I won't read all of those things, but those are the things through that framework that we just talked about that were needed or had to be thought through for construction of this park. There are soccer fields there. There's a playground. Certainly the Greenway network. It's a beautiful park. It does sit in an area surrounded by residential development that continues to grow. It was part of our long-range Greenway planning and in an area that was underserved, identified through our master planning for parks needs. It's rapidly developing. Availability, we had to be actively talking with landowners. And again, we don't use eminent domain. We don't force anyone. We don't, someone doesn't want to sell their property and just says, go away, then we go away. If they say, talk to me in a few years, we'll do that. We're patient. So in this case, we own the land, and we utilize capital funds. We had some nonprofit support, always looking for other sources. But anyway, what you see where you can kind of see folks back here. This Greenway winds around. We're standing in an area, I believe, just to the right, it's the playground, to the left are soccer fields. It's absolutely gorgeous. If you haven't been there, please go and visit. Mill Creek Greenway at Whitsett Park, a few miles away, north, Jenny's district, is Whitsett Park, which is on flood buyout property. It has a playground, a lot of open space, a field just for multi-purpose play, certainly a greenway. At one time we had a community garden. Hands on Nashville had maintained that. It's not active now, but it completely surrounded by neighbors. We have a bridge over Mill Creek there. It's absolutely gorgeous. This is right after it was installed, so the edges aren't pristine yet, but they are now. This has been in place for quite a few years. This project, along with many of our Greenway projects, we worked with the state of Tennessee on seedling plantings in the riparian zone. We've partnered with other groups and other sites, and I'll talk about them in a few minutes too, to mitigate flooding. This project had funding from community development block grant funds and a couple of other projects at the same time that we did. There was money there again to buy residences that flooded and folks wanted to sell. So we took that, beautiful trees, and turned that into a neighborhood park in Greenway. This is Mariposa Park, the master plan for the park, and you can see it has play areas, playgrounds, it has trails, it has paved Greenway, I would call it Greenway Trail, paved trail, hiking trails, absolutely beautiful. You can't tell from this rendering that it's terraced, but at the bottom part of the plan is a low area and just perfect, peaceful space. And you can see the connections to the left and to the top into neighborhoods. A true gem in a space that very much was underserved. Stones River Bend.
It's a great park for kids. Double loop.
Mariposa.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the Witsit. It's a great park for kids. It's just a double loop with bikes, and it's fantastic with
Yeah,
the playground.
it's perfect.
Fantastic, so, sorry.
You might see a bench there that a certain Girl Scout that I know may have built as part of it. We keep it in the family at parks. Anyway, yes, it's a wonderful, the playground, and we knew for that to be successful, it really needed a portion of it to be active, and I think we've achieved that. Stones River Bend is how this master plan was titled, but this is the Lytle Bend property that I talked about, which is part of the conglomerate Ravenwood Regional Park. What you see in the front that kind of arcs around with the trees is also contains the Stones River. It's absolutely beautiful. It will remain natural. There's another portion of Ravenwood that we just opened phase 1 with a fantastic playground, a beautiful event pavilion. There are trails, pickleball. I'm probably forgetting a few things out there. But again, part of long-range planning, knowing the need out in the Donaldson Hermitage area, rapidly development happening out there, certainly gives public access or neighborhoods surrounding it. We actually own a piece of property on the other side of this bend that we purchased from someone who had farmed it. And again, he didn't want to sell it in his lifetime, but he liked the idea, right, of it becoming a park. And Mr. Smith passed away, and his children, and wife, after about a year, decided that they would honor, his, wish that it could become a park, and we purchased that several years ago. It isn't developed yet. It will be. Mill Ridge Park, one of my favorites. What you see in green is, and honestly, they're all favorites, so, are parcels that we acquired. And we actually own this piece now in the middle. That was the last piece that we acquired. It has a farmhouse. The cultural landscape here was interpreted, as I mentioned before, by MTSU students. Phase 1 has been constructed. I didn't put up the master plan for this, but again, amazing playground, event space, or not events as in music events, but community event space, trails, tree canopy. Actually, the owner of this little interesting piece has reached out. It has a cell tower on it, and they don't wish to own the property anymore. So we're looking at acquiring that because it's a donut in the middle of our park, and we should have that. Cell tower will probably stay there, but keeping an eye on time here. Browns Creek Park and Greenway. So this is flood buyout property. It is the bookend to the Sevier Park to Gale Lane Park to Browns Creek Park Greenway that we're building, and I'll connect those in just a moment. But this was a neighborhood, and it was flooded during the 2010 flood. And Metro Water Services, through their program, purchased all but one home in this area, and it's got historical significance. There is an entrenchment there from the Civil War. There's some monuments off-site, but they're accessible. Beautiful, beautiful piece of property. I think I have the stream on the left. With Water Services, they worked with us to put up interpretive signage to talk about riparian zones and why those should be conserved and protected and enhanced. We try to do that educational piece wherever we can, wherever it's appropriate. But the stream, the tributary that flows into the larger Browns Creek Park is gorgeous. Browns Creek Park is channelized as it goes under the interstate. This remains, and beautiful piece. So tying that in, that park, Browns Creek Park, is here. This is Interstate 440. This is Sevier Park Community Center. This is Gale Lane Park, which was a park developed by the state of Tennessee. They built a greenway loop on it and have turned that over to us. So this project that we're designing now connects all three of these. And the bulk of the connections are in TDOT right-of-way, they're excess land. So again, that property became available to us through a license agreement. We developed plans, we went through their process, pretty extensive process, got approvals to utilize that space, and should wrap up that design work here the next month or so. We're going through permitting. But anyway, we're not creating a regular park, we're connecting three of them and neighbors to all of those facilities. So you have a community center, you have the historic Sunnywood Mansion on site. Sevier's very active with Farmers Market, the community center. Gale Lane Park's passive, a nice green space adjacent to the interstate. And then Browns Creek Park, as I mentioned.
How are you going to connect Sevier with Gale Lane Park?
Part of that is sidewalk connection, and that's already in place that NDOT constructed about a year or so ago. So for the most part, that's how that'll be connected. We are installing a new trailhead here at the community center with a connection on up into the sidewalk around to get you to the front door of the community center. From Gale Lane, we're widening out the sidewalk that was built by the state so that it could be multi-use. Then going in this excess land between the interstate and some residences, going under the interstate, and then do some really beautiful open space. We're bridging a portion of Browns Creek here before we tie into this trailhead at Browns Creek Park.
And what will that section of Leland Lane between Sevier Park and Gale Park, is that going to be widened, or how will that be treated?
It is. It's all off-street. And where we're able to, where we have the space, again, right-of-way, right? We, there are property owners there, so we can't just build our trail on their property. There are also some drainage features that the NDOT had to deal with when they built the sidewalk. But all of the trail itself is off-street. And once you get over to Battlemont, you've got quite a bit of buffer here. So it begins to really feel like a linear park. Here, you're underneath an interstate. We're adding lighting and really beefed up crossings to keep cyclists and pedestrians safe. Here, you're sitting at the foot. This is the cross section. Here's the trail, and to the right is the slope up to the interstate. So it's an urban greenway, no doubt, but we're adding trees and utilizing that space that otherwise is not utilized except for drainage. And then the other bookend to that phase two, the 440 Greenway, is outside our door. We are here, right here. And we have an existing trailhead for the first phase of 440 that was already constructed, and we'll be utilizing the wide concrete path that's in place. We'll cross the street, go around side Parks property. We're looking at a road diet, basically eliminate some of the on-street parking so that we can have extra width, and it will still be off-street and separated with a vegetated strip with tree plantings. And then we intersect with 31st Avenue. So here, we'll benefit from the bike lanes that were constructed by NDOT recently. In the past, bike lanes and sidewalks and a cycle track were built in this 28th Avenue connector. We're tying into that. We'll have trails that tie on over into Centennial Park. And so you'll be able to enter the 440 Greenway way over here at Elmington Park and travel down the Greenway. And then you'll hit an intersection where you have the choice of, we'll have the choice as we continue to develop our plans to access the Charlotte Corridor Railroad Trail, which will be here, or to cross the street and get into Centennial Park and enjoy all the improvements that have been made there and find your way over to Vanderbilt. So a really short section, I think it's 0.2 of a mile, but just a huge impact on where it begins to connect people. This project, we own the parkland, of course, and we will be delving into NDOT's right-of-way. So we're working closely with them on being able to adjust the parking there and build out that greenway. 440 Greenway. The reason I wanted to show this slide, a couple of reasons. Immediately to your right on the other side of those trees and shrubbery is the interstate, and it's lower than the elevation of the trail, but it's an amazing kind of respite in a very urbanized area with a greenway, interstate on one side and residential development on the other. This, again, we had capital funding to develop the greenway, but the property came to us through the license agreement with TDOT and then land that we already owned. This was opening day, and I think I drive past that at least once a day and always see people on it. So, a tough kind of site to put a trail in, but I think it turned out pretty well, and we know it's really well used. This one also had donations that were made through Greenways for Nashville, or two Greenways for Nashville that then came to us that we utilized in the construction of this trail. The Charlotte Corridor Rail with Greenway, again, we're still in the planning process. We are hot and heavy in the middle of trying to come to an easement agreement with the railroad, the Cheatham County Rail Authority, who've been working closely with us to accommodate a future Greenway trail through there. We're also trying to acquire open space as we go through that process. So it's an amazing potential connector, and we expect a first phase, more at the Charlotte Avenue, 28th connector kind of end, and then also connection into Frankie Pierce, probably being the first parts that we'll build of this. So in this instance, she would be able to travel from Elmington Park all the way to the Cumberland River Greenway. Sorry, losing my voice. When the Oracle Bridge is constructed, then you're over into East Nashville, all on a greenway in really just a few miles. It's a really short bike ride, much shorter than driving your car.
Cindy, can you go back to that one for a second? Let me ask a question that you... As we sit here as advocates for the future of future greenways, and certainly have our respected council people here, can you give us a framework for, like, when or at what juncture, when are we going to need more money for this?
So we were well-funded for first phase, and those funds are being utilized as we speak for the design. We did a very robust public engagement. We're still engaging with the public in this area. We will have expenses in terms of easements and larger open space for pocket parks. I don't know yet how much of the funding we have will be needed for the first phase because we're still, working out the right to be there and where exactly we can be. So I don't have an answer as to when we're going to need that funding. We do have funding that needs to be used to develop a first phase. So.
And first phase on that map goes from where to where?
Well, we're still, again, I don't have all the easements, but we're looking at one end of that being the connection at the 28th Avenue, Charlotte Avenue kind of intersection. And we're also looking at a section that would connect to Frankie Pierce Park and over to the farmer's market. But we've not done, we've done master planning. We can't do construction design until we have locked down the space that we can build this trail.
So it will be locked down for this master planning, and then it will be design.
Construction documents would come after that.
And then construction documents after. Master planning is separate from the design?
Sure, master planning comes first.
Mm-hmm.
And then tied in with the available funds, we'll develop first phase construction documents and build that.
And then construction. So I'm just trying to, as we talked about numerous times, trying to prepare ourselves for when we're going to need more money to move things forward more quickly.
Well, you will definitely hear that from us, from staff, when we enter into capital budget season, the next cycle. I don't anticipate that we'll be asking necessarily for design dollars because we were allocated some very generous design dollars that we have not fully spent. And, we have some other priorities that don't have funding, such as designing out the 440 Greenway completely and building those projects. So we look at it holistically across the system and across projects that are in design or ready for design. Ideally, we will always have projects in design, projects in construction, and any land acquisition that's needed alongside those, and just continuing that cycle.
Okay. Thank you. And I know there's a lot of that, but somehow we've got to get to how we get land way early in these things, and we can have a broader discussion about all of that as we look down the line, and how members of this commission, as people say things to us, we can. I know the first line of attack is to send them to you, but for us to understand what's happening and where it's going to be needed is always helpful when you can project ahead for us.
Yeah, I'll project as far ahead as I can. This one is not as far along as the 440 projects, for instance. The Whites Creek Greenway project that we're designing, we're doing construction documents on that. The land is there and available, and we're moving forward. So it really depends. Again, we can't build or even design in any kind of detail until we have the right to be there and know exactly where those boundaries are.
So that's good to know. I mean, just to be reminded that the construction documents on the Whites Creek and so that may well be something that needs construction dollars sooner rather than later.
Right, and we'll as a department put that together and put those requests together, and we look we're a department that, not just Greenways and open space, unfortunately, we like to think that that's most important. But, we have a lot of different facilities in the park. So as a department, and when we're looking at our asks, we consider a lot of things just like we do here when we're deciding which land that we should develop or which greenway we should build next. As a department, there's, a holistic look at all the things the department needs. There's a historical kind of range of funding that we have. I mean, I think there's some, expectations kind of already set, maybe not in gold, but we know the trends. And that's how we pursue those funding. So we do it very methodically. It needs to match with the master plan. It needs to service all these things that you see, that it needs to touch those points to move those forward. Obviously, if we've got projects in design, we know that the next step is construction, and those are going to be high on the list for request.
Thanks.
Sure. Gulch Greenway at Frankie Pierce Park, I mentioned that a few minutes ago. This was a collaboration with the developers of Capitol View and the city to take a piece of land that was kind of no man's land and sandwiched between two elevated railroads and turn it into a park. And it is an extremely popular park. It has a dog park, playground, walking trail through it, just areas to picnic. It's an amazing green space that also has a greenway connected with it. This greenway takes you back to the south all the way down to the Asurian campus. And that photo is the opening, really, really fun, great day. And again, this project had capital dollars. The developer paid for part of the development of this park. They dedicated land to the parks department. The greenway that you see at the right is on part of that land that we now own through donation. The developer worked with CSX to allow us to do landscaping, have a little landscaping easement along the greenway because we were so tight with space there. And this will eventually tie into, be part of the Charlotte Railroad Trail project. The Gulch Greenway at Asurian, and I'm not going to read all the things that this one touched, but I think you all know we had a greenway on this property, and it was an undeveloped lot. The easement allowed us, or the easement agreement allowed us to build a greenway, but this was Gannett, they were actively trying to sell their property, and so that easement agreement allowed for the greenway to be relocated on the side if it was purchased and developed, and that's what happened. To our benefit, the developer agreed on their own to design and construct and maintain this greenway to add lighting. They also partnered with Asurian for the artwork that you see here, this beautiful mural. It's very industrial. This is the trailhead underneath Church Street, which was there. We had a little fitness course there. They came in and rehabilitated that space, added the mural, and this was ribbon cutting. You can see how many folks came out to enjoy that. Now, the Highwoods property was the developer. In addition to building this section of Greenway, they purchased an adjacent property and built Greenway on that, and all the way down to the Broadway Bridge. And underneath the Broadway Bridge, we have an easement that we received from Highwoods for a trailhead. So that trailhead space will be developed as a mini park, just like this space under Church Street.
Cindy, we've run out of time for this part. I think if we're going to have some serious question time and some other that we need to get going.
Yep, I'm about to wrap her up here.
Okay.
Mullins Park, I do want to mention this one because it was flood buyout property We use capital dollars. We partner with Metro Water Services for tree planting. The Cumberland River Compact and the Route Nashville project facilitated that. That's ongoing across parks. This is our Whites Creek Greenway project that we were mentioning. What you see in red is that extension over here is Mullins Park that we were just looking at. So again, we're building out that network. It's part of the master plan. This property came to us through flood buyout program, so there was no money required there. And it will continue on. There are 2 private developments happening to the north that both will, we anticipate will include Greenways. So it's just a quick shot of Whites Creek. It is beautiful. England Park flood buyout property, partnership with the Sheriff's Department, with TDOT to build a portion of the Greenway under their interstate and their excess land. Didn't have to pay for this property. Metro, through their buyout program, paid, but those were federal dollars. There's a playground here that was built by the Sheriff's Department and quite a few volunteers. Beautiful, beautiful park that otherwise, it had homes, but it's added a wonderful green space. Bellmead, Richland Creek at Bellmead Plaza. We've talked about this one a good bit. Sorry, I just kind of want to run through a few more images so that you can see very urban greenways that are being built in association with developments that are happening, and they're making space for these greenways. They're building them, designing them, building them, and maintaining them. This is Peabody Union, and you can see the greenway to the left, which is slated to open in February. So happy to answer questions. It's really easy to get kind of sidelined into greenways, but do keep in mind, I mean, we're acquiring property for parks that sometimes don't have greenways. Still very important part of the whole system. And y'all are
This was
part of
very
that.
comprehensive. Thank you. I think opened our brains in a lot of ways, the way partners are working with us, how we ought to be listening to things, how we ought to be able to be responsive to people about complications, and how your priorities get set through those pillars, I think is extremely important. And as we think about what you are saying, which is that we're responsible for this whole county and how it moves forward in a big vision, but, always at high quality, but faster and better. And that's, and being a part of setting these priorities and how we go about doing that. And as a commission with our appropriateness. So, questions? Does anybody have big or probably less time for little, but vision questions that come to you? Okay. Well, thank you so much. That's great. And I think, we talked about doing the sort of top 4 or 5 most active, but I think you pretty well got through all of those as examples, and because we were going to talk about Whites Creek, Sevier to Browns Creek, Park Plaza to Centennial Park, and Charlotte Railway Trailway, and I think you caught us up on all of that, so we can move forward from that. Greenways for Nashville. Amy Crownover.
Thank you very much. You've all seen it probably in your mail and on our social media and in our e-blast. What are we busy with? One thing we're busy with is an event that we do. And it's a great opportunity to bring the community together. It's called Dinner by the Bridge. If you haven't been, I encourage you to consider buying a ticket and joining us. The actual individual tickets will go on sale in mid-August. So it's at the print shop now. You will all receive an invitation, and it does sell out, so don't delay. What we are also working on, we have about 10 in our last staff meeting. We reviewed about 10 community engagement opportunities. We're out in a very general sense, creating curiosity, getting folks out on the trails, creating users out of non-users, and creating explorers out of users. So we will be in East Nashville, we'll be at Whites Creek, we will be at Bell's Bend, and that is in a very general marketing sense with maps and wayfinding. We have installed, so that's outreach, our outreach, as far as some private dollars, our private dollars that are partnering with, and with their oversight, doing a restoration of trailheads. The new wayfinding graphics are up along the Cumberland River Greenway from Ted Rhodes Golf Course all the way down to John Sigenthaler Pedestrian Bridge. There is still some painting touch-up that needs to happen, so you haven't seen it in our announcing, but if you are on those areas, you will see the new graphics. I think they're beautiful. They are in line with what is sitting right out here. And some of those were probably 20 plus years old. So they were very dated. But so it's really exciting to have that. We're working on Richland Creek Greenway at McKay right now. We've got others in queue. So that's some privately funded projects that are enhancing the greenways. Any questions you have of Greenways for Nashville? And I want to make us available to the council people specifically. If you have a community event and it fits, we are happy to be there. We're a great resource. We are not the resource that Cindy is. We are a general resource, but these maps do fly off the shelf. The brand new map, Vanderbilt underwrites them, and we give out thousands, and people love them. And the website too. Send people to our website. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any metro departments, Cindy, that you happen to know want to say something?
Yeah, we'll give Donald a chance to get up and tell us whatever he would like to share that's going on at planning, because there's, I know, too much to share.
Again, Donald Anthony with the community plan section at Metro Planning. There is a lot going on. We have a number of studies that between community plans and project management that we are helping to coordinate. I'm hoping the next time that I'm back together with you, I'll be able to give you a little bit more details, because some of those are still being sort of fleshed out. And but one of the things we want to make sure that we're doing with community plans and project management is having our hand in all of those, including plan to play, so that we can make sure that everything is coordinated. The last thing anybody needs is 12 plans that are totally disconnected and that just end up gathering dust on shelves. So we're fortunate to be able to be part of all of those that are going on, and to be able to work with the different agencies to make sure that they stay coordinated together. We're also initiating some small area studies that we'll be conducting internally with community plans, and I'll be happy to talk more about those as they come along. I can tell you the first one that we're looking at right now, our friends in Cane Ridge have contacted us about some rural conservation preservation strategies. And I think that certainly Greenways will play into that. And so as we start along that process, we really haven't kicked it off yet. We've had some initial talks, but I suspect here in the next 3 months, we should get that underway. So I'll be happy to give you some more information and feedback and get your feedback on it as that project progresses. Thank you.
Great. Welcome.
Hey, Jeannie, I just want to make one quick announcement, if I could, about the Stones River Greenway.
Yes.
You all probably have seen in socials, we've got 3 different areas of the Stones River Greenway that are closed for maintenance. And one is, the most recent is Heartland. From Heartland Park, the bridge over Stones River to the Stone Hall Mansion is closed. We're repaving. We're not just repaving, we're repairing. Some of that has to be undercut and the base redone. A lot of work happening there. It's a 5-week closure. We know that's a long time, but it is, for safety, it's very much needed, and it just takes that amount of time. So that's happening. The Stewart's Ferry connector, also just, there's an area there that desperately needs to be repaved. That's part of this project as well. And then the boardwalk, there's a segment of boardwalk that needs maintenance from some recent flooding. So we just ask everyone in the public to please respect those barriers that you see where it's closed. It's for your safety. It's for the workers' safety. We just bear with us, and maybe if you can, try out some new trails that you haven't been to. I know that Stones River is very convenient for a lot of people, so it's easy for me to say that. But just know that we're doing that for the community, and they are working as quickly as they can to get those repairs, much needed repairs made. And we're very happy to have the funding to do that. So that actually got first priority for paving of that Greenways. Thank you.
Great. And maybe we can all help to get the word out about those, that they're get ahead of it instead of having to deal with complaints afterwards. You know, it's the good and bad news of being beloved. You know, when you're missing, it's missing. So, do you have anything else, Cindy, that you wanted to be sure we brought up?
Next meeting, October
Yes.
field trip.
October 9th.
Should be great weather. Would love to take you all over to Sevier Community Center and walk the path for the new trail that we're designing. We'll have the consultants there to answer any questions that they may have that I can't answer. It's about a mile, so it's an easy walk. We'll start at the community center. I'll send out more details, but there's water and shade there. We can go inside. Hopefully the weather will be fantastic. If it looks like we're going to be in the middle of storms, we'll figure that out, if we're going to have it or not. But I want you to see, what you've seen in plans. I'd like for you to walk and understand what that's going to look like. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. So, I think that hopefully and I think there's some reason to believe that there will be, a new trail opening early this fall, and you'll get the word as soon as as possible. And I want to really encourage every one of you to come to that, and then certainly any other segment openings that occur. But I wanted to see if you've got, I'm sorry we didn't have Kendra here today to catch us up on intersections with Kendra Abkowitz, intersections with the transit plan. Any information to you, Cindy, that you can share?
Nothing new. I mean, the referendum has to pass, and so they are very engaged with the community now on getting details out about that before the vote. The funding that is in that transit plan can be used for connections between transit, like bus stops, to Greenways via sidewalks, and I think bike lanes as well. Very much needed. That makes our system work better if we've got ways to get people connected. So that's just stay tuned, stay informed. I know their website has the information that you all have seen that Kendra has presented here before. So, vote. Go out and vote.
Yeah, and as you all may recall, the Greenways Division's participation has been to try to show where our trailheads, the ones that qualify with the main transit corridors, and just the way you're saying, where they potentially you could either build a greenway or a sidewalk that connects to there, but I guess a sidewalk probably most likely, or maybe a bikeway, whatever.
I think it depends on location. Yeah.
Okay, great. So stay tuned. So I hope everyone will come in October. At the field trips we've done in the past have been great, and we may have some business ahead of time, so please try to come on time. And also when we start to walk out, then you won't have lost us on that mile. I know you can get there, but that's
It's an easy walk.
Easy walk.
We'll make it fun. Field trips are always fun, so.
Yeah. So has anything come up that anybody wants to have more information about? mean, I have a variety of curiosities, but, and there are things like how much of the 440 or the City Central Greenway does have, at least theoretically, if we can negotiate it out, state lands, state right-of-way, because that certainly provides hope about faster, and some of it, I guess, is probably some metro lands. And so, my mind, and I'm sure all of our minds go to how do we get all of these things that are already on the plate in one stage or another to over the finish line, and how do we look forward even past that so that we are sure that, or as sure as we can be, that the lands in the future that are going to be needed to have our system connect up can be thought about. And I hear that Plan to Play may be helpful about that. So there probably are some pieces of information already out there that might be able to be, for us to look more closely at, like when you say the Greenways master plan, that, not sure exactly what that is, but.
Well, sure. Plan to Play, identifies our long-range goals. We've added goals to that, so those will be included in the updated plan, but it is the framework for the Greenways, the system that we're building out.
So Plan to Play with additions is, the current one is what we're operating under right now. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
And of course, I'm interested in the vision for connecting all the dots, like connecting 440 Greenway, how will the connectivity to Browns Creek Greenway happen? I think that's going to be complicated. And then how do you get across some of the corridors at Nolensville and Murfreesboro, et cetera, as it starts winding its way to downtown? So just how does the whole loop connect? It'll be interesting to see how we're going to connect from the 2831st connector up towards Fisk through Boyd Park and how that all works out. So the whole master plan for the bigger system is fascinating to me.
Yep, it does go back to right-of-way and open space. Again, we could have all the money that we need to build out City Central Greenway, but if we don't have the right to be on the land or space to be, then we can't start. So it goes hand in hand. There's only so much detailed planning you can do until you know exactly where you're going to be. So they come together. You can't detail a greenway on space that you don't have access to. So there's some limitations there to the amount of detail that you develop.
Any other questions? Any reports from your world, from the Parks Board?
No, I think we've had some good updates as of late. I know council member just left, but one of the kind of main topics, of course, is looking at the Bill Meade Highlands study and thinking about, again, the access and connectivity of our parks and our open spaces, and then also the impacts they have on neighborhoods. And so I really like coming to this meeting, seeing the context of green spaces and open spaces, finding those fantastic opportunities. Also had the pleasure of being a part of Mattery Postal Park, and so seeing how there are jewels that are in our neighborhoods and our communities. Great work and a lot of collaboration can unearth them for us. And I think, kind of in contrast to that, an area like Belle Meade Highlands has been known for a long time to be a jewel and very attractive. And so now we have some other solutions that we have to come up with for engaging those spaces and making sure they're accessible. And so kind of to Mark's point, just the big picture around all of those things, that's in planning's court right now. The study is happening, and the timeline for that is completion at the end of this calendar year, with recommendations that'll come forward early in 25. And so I think it'll end up being a model for how we look at some of our most activated open spaces and areas, because they do put a pretty significant demand on the neighborhoods around them. And so I think that's something that I'm excited to see how that plays out. And again, having a guide and a point of reference for how to do it in the future.
Great, great. Well, thank you. And hope we'll see everyone in October, if not before. We're adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.